So we took a zero today, and we've got no story to tell. We decided instead what we might do is answer a few questions that have come up. The first question is, have you changed your vote on camp shoes?
Yeah, we actually did change our vote on camp shoes, and several of you have asked us what kind of camp shoes we're actually hauling around.
I'm going to go back a little bit.
Okay.
Now, camp shoes are completely a luxury item, and throughout the winter, the first 35 days we hiked, we didn't have camp shoes, and what we would do at night is we would just loosen the laces of our trail runners, which are very comfortable. We turn them into like slip-ons, and when we just clog around the camp in our slip-on trail runners. But what we found since we came back on the trail is that we're hitting a lot of water, a lot of rainy days. So our feet are not getting a chance to dry out, and our shoes are soaking wet at night. So when we got to Hamburg, we decided to go ahead and start carrying our some camp shoes just to try it out, because we could always send them back home. Well,
turns out they let your feet dry out and they let your feet relax a little bit. And so there's a ton of choices. A lot of people use Crocs. I decided to try the Birkenstock Evos, which are just basically a plastic or a rubberized Birkenstock sandal. Great if you're doing a shower in a hostel, perfect camp shoe. And they've got a little tread on the bottom of them, so they're pretty good for just walking around the campsite.
And you can wear them with socks, which is nice. It turns them into slippers if you're in a hostel. My choice for camp shoes is what I took on the Camino, and that's a pair of Crocs. These Crocs also allow me to wear a pair of socks, and they worked great on the Camino. As camp shoes, they're okay, but they have these little massaging nubbins in them, which, as it turns out, are sometimes a little bit painful at night when your feet are feeling tender. But overall, I'm glad I've got them now, and I have used them, and they're super lightweight, so I don't mind carrying them. Besides, we're stronger now. Yeah, we don't mind carrying that little bit of extra weight. So because of rainy weather, because we need to let our feet dry out to keep them from getting, all kinds of different fungal infections, we are now in the camp shoe camp. All right. The next question we've been getting is, how did you get your trail name? I will tell the story of Slider, and he will tell the story of me. Slider was for a while known as Shock Top because his haircut matched the beer logo for the Shock Top beer. His hair no longer resembles the logo, but we did notice about a year and a half ago, when we were hiking in the fall on wet leaves, that he does slide a lot. So we decided that Slider was a good name for him.
I can cross-country ski down a fairly good slope on wet duff.
Yeah, so he owns it.
And so Granger got her trail name because she does all the homework. She is an insufferable know-it-all who actually reads all of the textbooks and does all of the thinking about the trail. She is our loggy, our logistician. She plans everything. And Granger's a fitting name.
And it's from the Harry Potter, not from the people who make the waterproof soaps.
Yeah, and she would, when we were camping with a large group of people, she would sit around the campfire and do gear talk for hours.
I used to know the weight of everything.
She knows her stuff. So Granger. And then our third, who you see a lot, is Rock Flipper. And eventually we'll let him explain how he got his trail name.
That's his story to tell. Cameras and editing. A lot of people have noticed that I take a lot of zoom shots, and I take a lot of wildlife photography, and I'm doing that on the Canon Powershot SX 740HS. And it has a 40 optical zoom. 40 power optical zoom, which I think is the equivalent of about a 600 millimeter lens. And so that is perfect for wild animal shots. You don't have to get very close to a snake to get a good personality shot with this camera. It also has the little flip screen, so we can do selfies with it. And I liked it so much that I make him carry one too, and that's what we're filming on right now. It's a lot of fun. It is fun. It's a little bit heavy, and I will say that you never want to get this wet, and that is the voice of experience. But as long as you can protect it from the water, you're good. When it's raining, I use my iPhone because it is a later model iPhone. It is water resistant, waterproof. So I use that when it's raining. I also use my iPhone for macro shots and for super wide angle shots. And some people have noticed I also have an Apple Watch, and somebody asked how I keep it charged. Well, I'm using a power block to power everything in my electronic suite. And here's the tip I have for anybody who's planning to hike. The tip is to get these little short cables on Amazon, because cables weigh a lot. So I try as often as I can to get cables that are about 6 inches to a foot and no more, and that will save a lot of weight. This power block has the technology to charge really fast. That is also something that's really important to have when you're on the trail, because you can't sit at Waffle House for 16 hours waiting for your block to charge, but you might be able to sit there for 4 hours. I'm not promising. Try it. Where did we meet Rock Flipper?
We met Rock Flipper in Georgia.
No, it was just past the Georgia line. We were hiking to the Muskrat Creek shelter, and it started to snow, and it was a really bad night. We followed Odin's footsteps to the shelter. When we got there, Rock Flipper was there, Odin was there, a couple other folks were there, and Rock Flipper's pace matches ours pretty closely. So we've been very happy travel companions since then. We've had a few days where we've gone our separate ways, and then we've come back, because ultimately we do hike at about the same rate.
Yeah, you never know when a day will go pear-shaped, but we've always ended up back together at some point.
And that happens a lot on the AT. We meet people all the time that have been hiking together for weeks and weeks and weeks. We got ourselves into a bubble for a while, and we were hiking with the same people for a week. And that's kind of part of the experience, and it's a good part of the experience when you get to meet like-minded people and spend time with them and get past that polite stage. Have you ever had an argument?
We've been married 40 years.
Of course.
Yes, we've had arguments.
But have you ever had a quiet day?
No.
No. We resolve it pretty fast, or we just forget about it. And it's never that important. We might both dig in because we're both stubborn, but no. Yeah,
Never
little
quiet.
snitty comments, but not real arguments. All right.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, the next question is your red bag, which is sitting next to you.
Oh yeah, this red bag.
Yeah, your red bag. See, this is in every video, right? Because I'm filming from behind him, and you see this red bag like for half the video.
Which is why most of you didn't actually know her trail name, because she does most of the filming and all of the editing. So she's talking about us, but one of you, actually several of you, have asked about this red bag. This red bag is actually a container for our tent, and we got some advice early on in the trail.
Was that from Trek?
From Trek.
Yeah, he's done the AT 9 times, or he was on his ninth. He's on his 9th time.
And what Trek said was, it's a really good idea when you get into the spring and summer months to carry your tent on the outside of your pack. That way, it's the first thing off your pack, and you can set it up and throw your pack inside of it, and it's the last thing back on your pack when you're tearing down in the rain. So you keep all your other gear as dry as possible, and only the tent is wet, and it's inside of a waterproof bag. So every few days I just take it out and shake it out, and when I get a chance I hang it online.
So picture you get to camp, and if your tent is buried in your backpack and it's pouring down rain, picture that for a moment and think how much easier this little system is. The other thing we use the red bag for is often when we do a resupply for 4 or 5 days, the volume of our food exceeds our bear bags. And so this gives us a little overflow. We can hang this just like we hang a regular bear bag.
Okay.
And we're not using it at night,
Right?
because the tent's already set up, so it's perfect for that. All right, logbooks. Do we sign the logbooks? You know, we did in the beginning when we would stay at places. They tell you not to handle the logbooks anyway because of norovirus. So you can imagine with COVID, the logbooks are even more hazardous if you want to look at it that way. So we used to sign the logbooks. The other thing is the logbooks are the history of the trail. And I used to believe it was important to put our name in that history, but this year we're all unrecognizable. The ATC will not recognize those of us who are out there hiking right now. So I don't, it's a calculated risk to handle the logbook, and I've decided it's not worth the risk. Once in a while I'll put us in the logbook, but like Pine Grove Furnace, I did. And the other day we crossed the Palisades Parkway, and they have a logbook halfway between the northbound and the southbound lanes. So I did sign us in there. They were recording data for the trail maintainers.
I was going to say that's a research project of some kind to help the trail maintainers out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But we've stopped handling the logbooks. It's nice to see your friends up ahead, but we're actually keeping better track of the people we know on the trail through YouTube and Instagram. And so that's how we track people this year, not the logbooks.
There's even a handful of people that are kind of on the same schedule, if you will, that we text each other. You know, when the water sources are bad, we'll get a text, No Worries yesterday texted us that a couple of the water sources were not just unreliable, they were not available. And so we were able to make some more informed choices about water. And so that trail community that's out there that's helping each other out is real.
And we got our friend OPSO, who we met in Hiawassee, our hero OPSO, who taught us about the Jolly Ranchers. OPSO's out about a week ahead of us, so we're really following his information very closely. Have you had any blisters?
I have not had any blisters. My feet hurt. I mean, they really are beat up from the last 5 or 6 days of hiking, but no blisters.
I ended up with 2 tiny blisters on the outside of my heels, I think from my new shoes, and from the terrain that we've been going through, which is pretty brutal. And I had, I think, another blister early on, but the blisters have already healed after about 4 days. I swear by RightSocks, but I have a new favorite sock now, and that's the Farm to Feed sock. They just really fit beautifully, and they're very comfortable. Many people wear Injinjis with a pair of Darn Toughs over them, but that's just, it hasn't been the combination that's been most successful for me. RightSocks were a game changer.
Yeah, I've been shifting back and forth between the RightSocks and the Farm to Feed. I find them both very comfortable, but when I know we're going to do a particularly rough patch, I go to the Farm to Feed because they're a little bit thicker sock and they provide a little more padding.
Yeah. Also, on some days we change socks at lunchtime to dry our feet out, and that could be from walking through water, or it could be because we're so hot that our feet are getting sweaty, and we'll change our socks to try to prevent blisters that way. We did have a gear change. Well, we had several gear changes in Hamburg when Expedition Director M came up with gear for us, a gear rescue. And one of those things that we changed out was we changed out our Thermarest XTherm air mattresses for a Big Agnes air mattress. The Big Agnes is it's really easy to inflate and deflate with the Big Agnes pump sack. So because we're lazy, it works better. But on the other hand, there have been some nights when it's been a little bit chilly because those Big Agnes air mattresses just do not protect you from cold ground.
Yeah, they're faster to deploy. They're lighter to carry.
Yeah.
I think we've only been uncomfortable though maybe 1 or 2 nights.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, they've done the job.
They're cushy and they're quiet, so those are 2 big pluses. How are your shoes holding up?
This stretch, my shoes seem to be holding up better than they have in the previous 2 pair of Ultra Lone Peak segments.
That seems weird because now we're doing rock climbing, not just walking across rocks.
I think the difference is the previous 2 times they blew out right at the balls of the feet, and so right on the inside of my foot. And that was probably from scuffing up against some of the rougher rocks that we experienced down south, and then again, when we were making it through the first part of Pennsylvania. But they're still 100 miles short of when the other ones blew out. So I think they're probably good for 200 to 300 miles. I'm going to stretch these to 300, and then I'm probably going to do a tire change.
Yeah. I switched from my Skechers Trail Runners, an older model that works really well for me, to the Salomons, and I don't know what kind of Salomon, but they have a rock plate. So I switched to the Salomons with the rock plate. They were good protection for my feet. They gave me little tiny blisters, but overall I think it was a good strategy to switch. I will say that I wish I had swapped out the shoes in Duncannon, because 2 days after Duncannon, the rocks got really bad in Pennsylvania. And I think that I can switch back to my Skechers here in the next 100 miles or so. But I'm glad I had the rock plate for the last 5 or 6 days in Pennsylvania. New Jersey was so easy. The trails were beautifully groomed, the rocks were smooth, and then we hit New York and it got really, really crazy for a while.
You're forgetting the stairway to heaven to get out of New Jersey.
Well,
that last day
that
was
came
hard
after
work.
Vernon, and the warning in the books say between Vernon and Bear Mountain is a really deceptively tough section, because on the elevation profile it doesn't look like much, but when you really zoom in on the elevation profile, you find out that the whole day is just up and down, up and down. And what they don't tell you is when you're going up, you're sometimes going up hand over hand.
Yeah, it's a rough patch.
It was a rough patch, yeah. It's been a fun trip, and part of the fun has been sharing it with you, our friends, our family, and the friends we haven't met yet. It's been very engaging, and we're awfully glad to take you along.
Thanks for joining us.